This is a family story I've only heard twice. I can't remember how it was brought up the first time, but the explanation was very vague, so I asked again a few months later when the family had come together at the cottage during summer. They seemed kind of iffy talking about it, but provided more details. They live in Ukraine, but took a trip to Turkey sometime in the 90s. They had rented a little cottage there that was far enough into the countryside to be considered fairly remote. Long story short, one evening the dogs outside started going absolutely crazy, barking viciously and just overall behaving erratically. One of them, my grandma's brother I believe, went outside to check what was going on and saw what they can only describe as a UFO nearing their cottage, pretty high up in the sky but lowering a bit as it came closer. He called for the rest of the family to come and see, and to this day they can still confirm what they saw. Well, the ones that are still alive at least. They said it was triangle-shaped and had 3 lights, one in each corner. When it got seriously close to the house, they really began to panic and ran back inside. The very walls were shaking, dishes were breaking from the force of the vibrations going through the walls and floor, and the dogs outside were barking louder than ever. It hovered over the cottage for several minutes before ascending back up and disappearing. These are all people who are very conservative and rational, and they hate discussions regarding the supernatural, so I have no doubt in my mind that they were telling the truth. When I was about 12, my best friends and I used to sleep out on my friend's trampoline in his yard in the summer. We would gather our bed stuff and bounce around till we got tired, then eventually lay down and go to sleep. One evening, 4 of us were laying on the trampoline talking when we noticed that there's something floating over the woods nearby. You couldn't see it directly, just that it blocked the stars out as it slowly moved. It was just a little higher than the treetops and completely silent. We were just some dumb kids, so we just watched it. Slowly it drifted until it was directly over top of us. Then suddenly there was this light that I cannot describe. It was more than blindingly bright. It was disorientingly, cripplingly bright, like it shone down into you. The next thing I remember, we were all standing inside my friend's house looking at his sliding glass back door, at the object still hovering there, and then it glided away. We were all spooked, but we decided to go back out to the bed on the trampoline. We're laying there for a while, and the next thing we know, it comes back again and does the exact same thing. Again, we find ourselves inside looking out at the back door. Beyond all reason, we go back outside to bed again. Same thing happens, again. We finally decide to sleep inside with the lights on. My friends and I lost touch as we grew up, but when I was 18, I heard one of them was in town. I ran into him at a party one night and pulled him to the side to ask him about that night, as it had bothered me for some time. His response was shaking me to this day. I cannot describe his reaction sufficiently. He looked at the ground and said, "I don't want to talk about it." I was kind of shocked by his response, so I didn't know what to say. He got up and walked out, and I stayed sitting there thinking about what had just happened. I got up after a minute to go see if I could find him, but he'd left immediately after. That was it. Haven't seen him or the others, but his response was enough to let me know something strange definitely went down that night. I don't know if I want to remember. About 2 years ago, I was in Naples, Florida with my friend. We were on the porch, having a smoke around 11 p.m. I was leaning on the railing when what I thought was a plane in the distance turned towards us. It was flying so low that the front lights blinded us. My friend scrambled for his phone, which turned out to be dead, and I, fearing I would miss it, didn't want to run inside to grab my phone. Though the craft was steadily gliding, it was all happening so fast. As the object got closer, we noticed it was a huge black triangle with 3 huge circular lights on the bottom. It was so close, just above the trees right in front of the building. It was so silent as well. The only thing making any sound was the trees rustling below the craft. Then the huge black triangle turned on a dime right in front of us and disappeared over the tops of the buildings. I wouldn't have believed what I saw if I didn't see it with someone else. This is a story of my father's. It happened in 1982 while my father was stationed on a military base in New Brunswick. One night, my father's best friend and his girlfriend left just after dark to go see Tron at a movie theater. About an hour later, the friend and his girlfriend were back on the base. The car pulled in, and my father immediately noticed that it was damaged pretty badly and covered in several different colors of paint. My father asked him what had happened when they had not gone to the movie. They brushed him off and went to bed. A few days later, my father got his friend to tell him what had happened. They were driving along a stretch of highway and they noticed lights coming from over a hill just ahead, where no lights should be because there was nothing around for miles. Just at the base of that hill was a parking lot for a park. A bunch of cars were pulling into the parking lot to investigate the lights, so my father's friend pulled in too. Everybody got out of their cars and was about to start hiking to the top of the hill when a large disc with flashing lights rose above the hill's peak and emitted a loud, strange sound. Several cars got banged up and everyone's panicked to get away, thus the transfer of paint. My father's friends drove back to the base as fast as possible. A few days later, men in black suits showed up on the base looking for people. They talked to my father's friend and then sent him on his way. My father asked him what the men wanted to see him for. The men told the friend that he better shut up, say nothing about anything that happened if he wanted to keep his military career. As a kid back in the 80s, I was spending the night at my aunt and uncle's house, which was out in the sticks of Tennessee. I was sleeping on the couch and woke up due to a bright light coming through the kitchen window and into the living room. I was looking towards the light, which was white and slightly flickering. After about 10 minutes, I turned my head as it was now keeping me awake. After a few minutes, I turned my head back towards the light and was about to go to sleep on the love seat. I see a tall, dark figure standing between myself and the light. I was frozen and could not move or scream. It approached me, reached out, and began tapping on my forehead with what felt like a nail or something pointed. This went on another few minutes until I must have fallen or was put to sleep. I woke up the next morning to a quiet house. I go into the bathroom and I have a red spot on my forehead and the skin was slightly broken, but no blood. I haven't had any encounters with aliens, but my mom has. On 9/11/2001, yes, I'm serious, my mom went on a walk on the waterway after watching the news for hours. This was in the evening time, so the no commercial flight sanction was already in place. While on her walk, she looked up after feeling like someone or something was watching her, and she saw a triangular aircraft floating above her. At first, she thought it might have been a military craft of some sort, but then realized it was making absolutely no noise. She said it was so low to the ground that she could probably have touched it if she wanted to. But before she could reach out and touch it, the craft zipped away quickly with no sound at all. Driving in the UK from a friend's dinner party, we set off at around 10 p.m. for a 15-minute drive home. There was myself, my wife in the front, and my 3 sons in the back of the car. We were driving near a U.S. Air Force base in the southeast of England along a long straight piece of road when there was an incredible flash that the wife and I noticed, and it seemed to wake up one of the elder sons in the back. He would have been about 12 at the time. Something, I have no idea what, flew with absolute silence over the car. I saw it, my wife saw it, and the son in the back who was awakened by the flash saw it. Something flew right over us, so close you could touch it, and it was big. We got home, discussed it a bit, and concluded the flash was a flare from the U.S. Air Force Base, and the large object that flew over us may well have been a Eurasian eagle owl. One had been spotted in this area. It was promptly forgotten. Fast forward just a decade, and I and the son who was woken by the flash are talking about this weird event over dinner when the youngest son, who didn't wake up during the event, tells us how he remembered it happening. He recalled an event that was vastly different than ours. He had never told this story before. He thought it was a dream until we started talking about it. He described how the car was stopped when he saw the flash. We weren't moving and the low-flying object sat on top of us for a few seconds. then flew off before the car started again. Apparently, I completely ignored this stop/start and simply continued driving. Now here's the really cool bit that we never realized. My wife had made arrangements to call her sister when we arrived home safely. We left at around 10 p.m. for a 15-minute drive. My wife called her sister around 11:45 p.m. to say we had arrived home. I have no idea what happened that night. I was completely sober. My youngest son insists that something very odd happened. My wife is adamant that we took approximately 90 minutes to do a 15-minute drive. Her sister backs this up. I might not know what happened that night, but I am secure in the thought that something happened.